Right, so this is one of Keychron's newest keyboards, the K2AG. They came out with a Kickstarter several months ago that got immediately fully funded. A lot of people are really excited to get this in hand, and I've been really excited to review this for you guys. Now, I've been a Keychron keyboard fan for quite some time. This is my own K8 that I bought a long time ago. I've modded with neoprene acoustic materials. I've modded the switches. I've modded the stabilizers, aftermarket keycaps. Absolutely love it. But since I've been using the HE with the new Hall effect magnetic switches, I am a complete convert. These are the switches I'll be going with now on any keyboard. So I've been using the K2AG for like several months now, so I've got a pretty good feel for it. For those of you that aren't aware of what magnetic switches are or what they do, instead of the traditional analog, I guess you could say, mechanical switches where it's using copper pins to create a connection with the PCB, we're actually using magnets. And what that allows us to do is, if you look on the keyboard here, I can set the actuation point, so the time that the key is actually activated, as little as 0.2 millimeters or all the way down to 3.88, I think, or 3.80. I'll have to check my notes. So what that means is if you're a gamer, for example, you can set the actuation points really, really shallow so you can get instant strafing back and forth, for example. If you're a typist, you can set the actuation point super, super deep. That way it decreases, or at least in theory, decreases the amount of typos or misspells. And because of these new abilities, the configurator that we use to customize this keyboard gives us a ton more options. Options that I think some serious competitive gamers would just drool over. So let's get into it. Now, this is one of the special edition models, all right? So with the special edition, you get, of course, your aluminum framing, but we also get these wooden side panels, all right? So with the black version, which is what this is, as you can see here, we get the darker stained wooden side panels. And then, of course, with the white version, you would get a white aluminum frame with lighter stained wood side panels. Now, the standard version is all black, and it's an all aluminum frame, so you don't get those wood side panels. That being said, the standard version's only $10 less, so you may as well just get the special edition. Another difference between the standard and the special edition is the standard version has old school, like standard cherry profile keycaps, whereas the special edition version, as you can see, has double shot PBT OSA profile keycaps, which I actually much prefer. Now, one cool thing to keep in mind, because these are wooden side panels, if you happen to damage them like I have here, or you just want to change the color, all you gotta do is spend a couple of bucks at the hardware store, get some sandpaper and some wood stain, you're good to go. Now, before we get to all the cool stuff, I just want to show you really quickly what we got in the box. All right, so quick look at the front of the box. Keychron K2HE, it's a 75%. Let's slide this sleeve off, take off the lid, and you've got your little quick start guide giving you an idea of all the little switches and what they do. And then, of course, we get all of our accessories, which I'll open for you now. Our keycap and switch puller. We've got an Allen key and a mini screwdriver for your stabilizers and, I don't know, something else, I'm guessing. Here is your braided USB-C cable, some additional keycaps, and a little adapter job for your USB-A to USB-C. Actually, I forgot to show you guys this too. This is the little USB-A 2.4 gigahertz wireless receiver that you plug into your computer. And that actually brings me to the connections. As I've already mentioned, we've got 2.4 gigahertz wireless. That'll also give you the 1000 hertz holding rate. In my opinion, that's the way to go, but we do have Bluetooth 5.2. Like I mentioned before, you can pair up to 3 devices. We also have USB-C wired connection. By the way, if you do use 2.4 gigahertz, you'll notice that the power off to power on connection is like instantaneous. Power off, you press the space bar, you're instantly connected to your computer, unlike Bluetooth, where, you know, it's powered off, you press the space bar, it'll take a few seconds to establish that connection to your computer's Bluetooth chip, right? So 2.4 gigahertz, in my opinion, is the way to go. Now, you'll notice all the connections are on the left side of the board here. My personal preference is on the back, but it is what it is. USB-C connection, of course, your OS selector. So we've got Windows and Android, or Mac and iOS. You're most likely going to be able to use it with Linux as well, but don't quote me on that. You've got cable, Bluetooth, and of course G for wireless gigahertz. Alrighty, so I've got the overhead light turned down just a bit to give you guys a bit of an idea of the perky RGB backlighting. It's definitely not the brightest RGB backlighting I've seen. A lot of that has to do with the Hall effect switches themselves. They've got a lot of thick diffusion over the LEDs on the PCB. Regardless, the mode selector key is in the top right. And you can see we can just kind of cycle through all these different types of modes. Using the web configurator, you can adjust the hue and saturation and brightness, as well as whatever else you want to do. So now the typing acoustics on this board sounds fantastic, and it's really consistent too. And that's all thanks to Keychron including different types of acoustic enhancing materials in their boards these days. Sounds fantastic. Now, one thing I did notice while typing with the K2HE for prolonged periods of time is that even though we do have these dual stage feet, as you can see here, the stock angle is still pretty extreme, at least for my wrist. So after about even just 10 minutes of typing, my wrists get pretty sore. So I do have to use my wrist rest, which is only about 1 inch thick. And quite frankly, while it does alleviate the stress on my wrist considerably more, I'd still like a thicker wrist rest for that added bit of comfort. It's still a bit extreme for me. And the K2 has Keychron's new updated stabilizers with taller sidewalls in an effort to create a stronger connection between the stem and the keycap. And while they've certainly been a noticeable improvement over previous stabilizers, I personally think there's still a little bit of room for improvement, notably the spacebar, which is still a bit rattly. So if you've never seen a magnetic switch before, as you can see, unlike your traditional mechanical switches, there's no copper pins or leaf that come in contact with your PCB to complete your keystroke. Instead, as you can see, as I press down the stem, it's a magnet. It's a little magnet that comes into contact with the PCB, and that is what creates your connection stroke. If I turn this around, you'll notice that we've got quite a bit of diffusion going on here. So this is what's going to prevent the LEDs from shining quite as bright as they could, although it's not terrible. Now, this is a linear switch with a start force of 40 grams and an end force of 60 grams. It also has an actuation range of 0.2 millimeters, super shallow, to 3.8 millimeters, super deep. Fantastic switches. So one thing to keep in mind that's really important, which some of you may have already realized, is that while even though this keyboard is hot swappable, it's only hot swappable with other Keychron double rail magnetic switches, okay? So you can't take non-magnetic switches and try and throw them in here. They won't do anything. You can only use other double rail Keychron magnetic switches, all right? Right, now the board comes with a 4,000 milliamp hour battery. And of course, battery life's gonna be heavily dependent on things like, you know, what you do with the RGB backlighting, how often you use it. Are you using Bluetooth or are you using the 2.4 gigahertz wireless? And what's the polling rate, right? So for me personally, I use the 2.4 gigahertz wireless, like I said, at 1,000 hertz polling rate, which is of course going to use a bit more energy. And I'm gaming pretty much every night with that, and of course emails and browsing the web all day and doing whatever the hell most people do on their computer, right? This will last me about 5 days to 7 days pretty consistently. Now, if I'm doing nothing, right? I'm just maybe browsing the web, just typing up emails or chatting with friends online, stuff like that. This will last me 9 days, something like that. So it's not the best battery life, but it's far cry from the worst battery life. I would say it's pretty satisfactory. All right, so how do we customize the K2HE? Well, you use Keychron's new online configurator. No app to download, you just go to this URL and you click connect and you're connected. And it's just like any software configurator you download onto your desktop for your mouse or keyboard or whatever. Of course, you can customize, macros, you can customize specific keys, different layers and levels and profiles. You can customize the backlighting, all kinds of stuff. It's really well laid out and pretty intuitive, nicely polished too. They did a good job with it. And because we've got the new HE switches, of course, right at the top of the menu, we get a new HE custom menu. I really like that we can set up the different profiles, right? So you can set up to 3 different profiles. I'm only using 2 at the moment. One is for typing, so I've got the super deep actuation points, and one is for gaming with the super shallow actuation point. But I'll be honest with you guys, there is so much customization, so many customization settings and options in this software. It's quite a bit overwhelming for me. It's pretty overkill, so I keep my settings pretty darn basic compared to what maybe some more competitive or serious gamers might use. Luckily, the interface is extremely intuitive, and setting up the actuation point, which is like the bare minimum of customizing this board you should be doing as soon as you get it in, is super easy to do. Same with rapid trigger, really easy to set up and adjust. Although I'm still trying to find the right balance between actuation and rapid trigger settings. So I'll get there eventually. But if you really want to confuse yourself, jump into one key multiple commands or like long press switch or even curve settings. I mean, you can really dial in your needs and wants. That stuff is way beyond me though. And I'm not making this up when I say this, that I personally believe that my gaming performance in first-person shooters has noticeably improved with these new magnetic switches thanks to the like super shallow actuation points that I set. Like all my movements just feel a lot more like intentional, like snappy, do you know what I mean? And when I do typing tests, I've noticed that I'm also significantly faster at typing with a significantly lower rate of typos because of the super deep actuation point that I set for typing. So let's do a quick sound test and wrap this puppy up, shall we? All right, wrapping up. For $140, you're gonna be getting yourself a special edition keyboard with aluminum frame and wooden side panels. You've got yourself double shot PBT OSA profile keycaps. Of course, you've got yourself some magnetic switches so that you can play around with the actuation points to your heart's content. A 4,000 milliamp hour battery, which should last you about a week per key. RGB backlighting, and enough acoustic material on the inside of this keyboard to like kill an elephant. I don't know what a good metaphor is. $140, you really cannot go wrong. Premium features at mid-range prices. But that's gonna be it for this one. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll talk to you all in the next one. Cheers.